On the weekly chart, we're going to take a look at ticker symbol QQQ. That is going to be the ETF of the NASDAQ 100. Now, we all know that we had Micron earnings in here. So where we ended today, 710, obviously after close, that changed because we just got a nice rip in here immediately after close. And we actually traded all the way up near those 724s in after hours. And right now we're trading right around 722. So looking at this big red candle in here on the week, you're going, oh my gosh, this is a huge drop. That's what we were waiting for up here. But actually, no, because it looks like tomorrow we're going to be trading right around that key level of 722. This is something that we've talked about in the past. You can see in May for a couple weeks, that was a harsh resistance for us. It was also a support again a couple times in here just as early as last week. So 722 is going to be the number in here that we are going to watch. Also, pre-market this morning, notice those upper 718s, those 719s. That's going to be a spot for us if that 722 gets kind of bounced and banged around. Look for a recovery in there about 719 before we can get another run up and a push through those upper 721s and that 722 level. Now today, obviously, it was an up and down day. It was more or less we had the big run up into Micron early earnings just too early, right? That's all it was. So instead of having the run up for the past few days, we had it last week into Monday, and then obviously everything kind of came down on starting on Monday, right? So that's kind of all that happened. You had everybody pricing in Micron earnings, then everybody took their profits. Everything just kind of sold off in here. The Qs were actually trading down in here about 704 today. And then obviously, as Micron earnings hit, that skyrocketed. You had things like SanDisk and other things kind of take off. And basically, the whole Qs just kind of went up and more or less it took everything up with it, right? So it looked like everybody was just kind of pricing in. The question was this going to be a setup for a big rip to the upside? It looks like that's exactly what happened. Usually, when we have a large fade like that into a major earnings report, that's what everyone is doing. Same with if you have a huge run up into earnings, that's usually what happens. Everybody's been getting ready to fade this. So more or less, that's it looks like that is kind of what happened here. You had Micron trading in after hours up near those 1200s. That's basically a 200-point move as we were down in those upper 990s just before close when you had that nice little run in there. So good move for Micron. That should be opening up near those 1200s or close to it. And then also the Qs, nice little pop. I mean, the whole market, right? SPY, everybody popped in here after hours. So the question is, how much of a pullback are we going to get in here as we go into market open tomorrow? That is going to be the number one question, if any. Or are we going to keep on running up in here? Are we kind of, if my personal gut feeling is we're probably going to stay around those 722 areas, maybe give or take a couple dollars here or there, but most likely probably around 722 on at the open. And then from there, it kind of all bets are off. We're going to see what happens, right? Are we going to tank this thing right back down? Because I have a feeling if we tank it back down, it's going to get eaten up. And then the question is, how much further is it going to get eaten up? But if we get a nice little rip in here, the question is that going to hold, right? Are people just going to start taking their profits and then go from there? So we'll see what happens in here in your Qs, basically your expected moves and everything that were already priced in by this Friday. We already smashed those in after hours, right? So we don't really have any good volatility to kind of gauge at the moment right in here. But the Qs, this out of the SPY, and then IWM, obviously the Qs were that was the ticker that had the volatility, right? That's why everything was trading so rich in here, especially to the call side, because your risk was always to the call side in here. And at 4 o'clock today showed us that that's why your risk is to the call side in here. That's why you always have major call skew because of rips like that we just had. I mean, just a huge 12 handle move in after hours in about 15 minutes, if not more than that. So a huge move in here. Above the 722s, what we're going to be looking at is going to be that 738 area. Then obviously we're looking at this 748 high in here. That is what we're kind of focusing on. Obviously, you have this upper trend line that's going to be knocking around right around 742. But to the downside in here, we are going to be watching that 9-day EMA, although we traded just below that today. in those upper 704s. We kind of overran it, but 705 is where that 9-day EMA is. Anything below there, we're looking at 696. So we're going to see how things adjust. We're going to see where this RSI leads us tomorrow, right? Because this RSI is already priced in just by today's close, 710. So tomorrow, obviously, we're going to be higher. So it's going to look like a gap up. It's going to push this RSI higher. Our momentum indicators and everything should kind of push up. So we're going to see how that kind of adjusts the gauges of everything and all our technical indicators, see how much that is going to change. But all in all, nice move in here. It looks like the bulls, you're going to have a nice win in here tomorrow, especially if you bought at the close, or especially if you were doing any sort of selling of puts anywhere, more or less. It looks like you are going to win, especially if you bought calls in here. A nice quick move in here to the upside. So congrats to all. Let's see how things shake out. Keep an eye on your Qs and then watch Micron tomorrow, because that is going to give us a heads up of what could happen to the overall market, right? We're all kind of based on that. So I know that we are going to have some drag. Usually it happens for a couple of days after a big earnings run. So usually you get a huge pullback or a huge run up, right, into earnings or after earnings, that is. You're going to kind of lag out right there for a couple of days. Watch Micron. I don't think we're going to necessarily get that because this thing is such a big mover and it's so liquid. But keep an eye. If we get a sharp pullback in Micron tomorrow, just people taking profits, watch for the Qs to kind of pull back as well. Watch that correlation. If we do get a correlation, then that is fine. That is what we're looking for. But if it's uncorrelated, we get a huge pullback in our Qs, Micron staying up, then don't really worry about anything too much there for your correlation. But all in all, let's see what happens in here as we continue throughout the week. We got a couple more trading sessions left. Congrats to all on this huge gap up that we're probably going to get tomorrow. And let's see what happens in here as we end the week. All right, guys, if you like this video, make sure to check us out on all our social media. We also have a Discord service if you are interested, and you can find all of our socials in the description below.